Margaret is 71 years old. She lives alone in a quiet house in Ohio, a house she bought with her own money after her divorce 10 years ago. When I first spoke with her, she was sitting on her porch with a cup of coffee, watching the morning sun come through the trees. No one was there to interrupt her. No one was asking what's for breakfast or complaining about the temperature. Just silence. And for the first time in her life, that silence felt like freedom. Margaret spent 45 years in a marriage where she felt like a ghost. She cooked meals no one appreciated. She gave advice no one listened to. She shared her feelings and was met with silence, or worse, dismissal. I was invisible, she told me. I existed to make his life easier. That was my role. When her husband passed away 5 years ago, everyone expected her to fall apart. Her children worried. Her friends offered to stay with her. Some even suggested she move in with family, but Margaret surprised them all. She didn't want company. She wanted space. She wanted mornings where she could wake up without checking someone else's mood. She wanted to eat dinner at 9 p.m. if she felt like it. She wanted to spend Saturday reading without anyone asking what she was doing. And when she finally had that space, something unexpected happened. She felt peace. Not the kind of peace that comes from having everything you want, but the kind that comes from finally being free to be yourself. People kept asking if I was lonely, Margaret said. They couldn't understand how I could be happy alone. But Margaret wasn't lonely. She was finally alone, but not lonely. She had peace, with no drama. She felt independent, not frail. She had freedom with no concessions. And most importantly, she was happy, with no heartaches. Margaret's story isn't unique. All across the country, older women are discovering the same truth. Living alone isn't something to pity. It's something to celebrate. In fact, research shows that women over 60 are now the fastest growing demographic choosing to live alone. Not because they're sad or forgotten, but because they've learned something powerful. Being alone is better than being invisible in a relationship. Society tells us that older women living alone must be lonely, broken, tragic. But the truth? It's far more empowering than anyone expects. Today, I want to share 5 truths about older women who live alone. Truths that challenge everything you've been told. Before we begin, hit that like button and comment your living situation below. Your story matters. Let's get started. Here's something most people don't understand about older women who live alone. The silence isn't emptiness, it's a sanctuary. For decades, many women filled their lives with noise. Children crying, husbands demanding, relatives calling, friends needing. They spent their entire lives being needed by everyone else, but when you live alone, suddenly the noise stops. And at first, that silence feels uncomfortable. You wake up in the morning and there's no one to cook for, no one to clean up after, no one asking you what's for dinner. But then something happens. You realize, this silence is yours. One viewer put it perfectly. The silence is not emptiness, it's a sanctuary. Dorothy, 68, told me, "For 40 years I woke up to someone else's needs. My husband wanted coffee at 6 a.m. My kids needed breakfast. My mother-in-law needed phone calls. I never had a morning to myself. Now, I wake up when I want. I drink my coffee in silence. I sit on my porch and watch the birds. And for the first time in my life, I feel calm." Psychologists call this reclaiming your space. Studies show that women who live alone in their 60s and 70s often report lower stress levels, better mental clarity, greater life satisfaction. Why? Because they're no longer performing for anyone, they're no longer keeping the peace, managing emotions, or tiptoeing around someone else's mood. One woman wrote, "No violence, threats, intimidation, or eggshells to walk on." That sentence says everything. For many women, living alone means living without fear, without walking on eggshells, without constantly managing someone else's emotions. Another viewer said, "Living alone is much less lonely than living with someone who shuts you out. It's much better to be happy in your own company." Read that again. living with someone who shuts you out is lonelier than living alone. Because loneliness isn't about being alone. It's about feeling unseen, unheard, and invisible. Many women spent decades feeling invisible in their own relationships. They cooked meals no one appreciated. They gave advice no one listened to. They shared their feelings and were met with silence or dismissal. And that's true loneliness. But when you live alone, you can finally be seen by yourself. Questions to ask yourself: do I feel more alone when I'm with people or when I'm by myself? Have I been performing for others instead of being myself? What would my mornings look like if they were truly mine? Living alone teaches you that silence is not something to fear, it's something to embrace. Here's a truth that many women discover only after living alone. It's better to be alone than to be invisible in a relationship. One viewer said it perfectly. She'd rather be alone than be invisible in a relationship. Can I get an amen? Amen. For years, many women stayed in relationships where they felt unseen, where their opinions didn't matter, where their needs came last, where they cooked, cleaned, supported, sacrificed, and still felt like they didn't exist. Helen, 73, shared her story. I was married for 45 years, and for most of those years, I felt like a ghost in my own home. My husband didn't ask about my day. He didn't notice when I was sad. He didn't care about my hobbies or my dreams. I was there to make his life easier. That was my role. When he passed away 5 years ago, everyone assumed I'd fall apart. But you know what happened? I felt relief. For the first time in decades, I didn't have to justify my existence. I didn't have to earn the right to take up space. I could just be. This is a painful truth. Many women discover themselves only after they stop living for someone else. Research from the University of Michigan found that women who leave unfulfilling relationships in their 60s and 70s report significant improvements in self-esteem, emotional health, overall happiness. Why? Because they're no longer shrinking themselves to fit someone else's expectations. They're no longer performing the role of supportive wife or selfless mother. They're finally living as themselves. One woman wrote, "I guess a woman living alone is seen as sad, but I, as a woman living alone, think it's sad anyone needs a relationship to not feel alone." Let that sink in. Why do we assume that being alone is sad? Why do we pity women who choose solitude over bad company? The truth is, needing a relationship to feel whole is sadder than living alone. Because it means you've never learned to enjoy your own company. It means you've never discovered who you are outside of what you do for others. Another viewer said, "I've been living on my own since my divorce 10 years ago. I rarely get lonely, but if I do, I just call a friend and go out. My life has never been more peaceful." Notice what she said. My life has never been more peaceful. Not lonelier, not sadder, more peaceful. Questions to ask yourself. Have I ever felt invisible in a relationship? Do I stay with people out of fear of being alone? What would peace look like for me? Living alone teaches you that being seen by yourself is more important than being seen by someone who doesn't truly see you. Here's a misconception that needs to be destroyed. Society sees older women living alone as frail, helpless, needing rescue. But the truth? Independence is strength. One viewer captured it perfectly. Alone, not lonely. Peaceful, no drama. Independent, not frail. Freedom, no concessions. Happy, no heartaches. Let's break that down. Alone, not lonely. There's a huge difference. Loneliness is pain. Solitude is peace. Many older women living alone aren't lonely. They're choosing solitude. Peaceful, no drama. For decades, many women managed everyone else's drama, mediated fights between family members, soothed hurt feelings, carried emotional labor no one acknowledged. But when you live alone, the drama stops. You don't have to manage anyone's emotions but your own. Independent, not frail. Society assumes older women need help, need protection, need someone to take care of them. But many older women living alone are thriving. They pay their own bills. They fix their own problems. They make their own decisions. Susan, 69, told me, "After my husband died, everyone kept asking if I needed help. Do you need someone to mow the lawn? Do you need someone to fix the sink? Do you need someone to manage your finances?" At first, I thought maybe they were right. Maybe I couldn't do it alone. But then I hired a lawn service. I learned to fix the sink myself from YouTube. I hired a financial advisor. And I realized I don't need a man. I need competence. And I'm perfectly capable of getting that. This is a powerful truth. Women don't need rescuing. They need resources and respect. Studies show that older women who live independently report higher levels of self-efficacy, belief in their own abilities, problem-solving skills, personal confidence. Why? Because they're forced to become resourceful. They can't rely on someone else to handle it, so they learn, they adapt, they grow. Freedom, no concessions. One woman said, "I retired at 56 to live the way I want." Think about that. For 56 years, she lived according to other people's expectations. Then she said, "Enough," and she built a life on her own terms. Freedom means eating dinner at 9 p.m. if you want, traveling alone without asking permission, spending money on yourself without guilt, saying no without explanation, happy, no heartaches. This is the final truth of this section. You can be happy without a relationship. In fact, many women are happier without one. Why? Because they're no longer dealing with someone else's anger, nursing someone else's ego, sacrificing their dreams for someone else's comfort. Questions to ask yourself: do I see independence as frailty or as strength? What would I do if I had complete freedom? Am I happier alone or in a relationship that drains me? Living alone teaches you that independence isn't something to fear. It's something to embrace. Here's a truth that hits hard. Many older women living alone built the life they have by themselves. One woman, 71, wrote, "I bought my house, rescued my best companions, dogs, and retired at 56 to live the way I want." Read that again. She bought her own house, not with a husband's income, not with a partner's help, on her own. Barbara, 67, shared, "Everyone assumed I inherited my house from my ex-husband, but the truth? I worked 2 jobs for 15 years to save for a down payment. I chose the house, I signed the papers, I made the mortgage payments. And when I finally paid it off at 65, I stood in my living room and cried, because this house, it's mine. No one can take it from me. No one can tell me how to decorate it. No one can make me leave. It's mine." This is what society doesn't understand. Many older women living alone aren't surviving. They're thriving. They're not waiting for someone to rescue them. They've rescued themselves, and she rescued her dogs. Notice she didn't say, "I got a pet." She said, "I rescued my best companions." For many older women, their dogs aren't just pets. They're family. They're companionship without drama. They're love without conditions. One woman told me, "My dog doesn't judge me, doesn't criticize me, doesn't need me to be anyone but myself." That's real love. Studies show that older women who live alone with pets report lower rates of depression, higher levels of daily happiness, greater sense of purpose. Why? Because caring for a pet gives structure, routine, and unconditional love, and she retired at 56. Think about what that means. Most people retire at 65 or later, but she saved enough money, made smart decisions, and retired early. Why? So she could live the way she wanted, not the way society expected, not the way her family demanded, the way she wanted. Patricia, 70, told me, "I spent my 20s, 30s, and 40s living for everyone else. I raised kids, I supported a husband, I cared for aging parents. But in my 50s, I realized I have one life, and I'm not spending the rest of it making other people comfortable. So I saved aggressively. I downsized. I retired early. And now I travel. I paint. I volunteer. I do what I want, when I want. And I've never been happier. Questions to ask yourself. Have I built anything that's truly mine? Am I living for myself or for others' expectations? What would I do if I had complete control of my time? Living alone teaches you that you don't need someone else to build a good life. You can build it yourself. Finally, here's the most important truth. Living alone doesn't mean living without love. Many people assume that older women living alone are isolated, cut off from connection, starved for affection. But that's not true. Joyce, 74, told me, "People ask me all the time, 'Aren't you lonely?' And I say, 'Lonely? I talk to my best friend every morning. I have coffee with my neighbor twice a week. I FaceTime my grandkids every Sunday. I have love in my life. I just don't have someone controlling my life.'" This is the key distinction. You can have deep, meaningful relationships without living with someone. In fact, research shows that older women who live alone often maintain strong friendships, close family bonds, active social lives. The difference? They choose their connections. They're not obligated to anyone. They spend time with people who energize them, not people who drain them. One woman wrote, "I rarely get lonely, but if I do, I just call a friend and go out. That's the secret." She knows how to manage loneliness. She doesn't need a live-in partner to feel connected. She has friends, she has hobbies, she has a life. And when she feels lonely, she reaches out. Another woman said, "My life has never been more peaceful." Notice she didn't say perfect. She said peaceful. And for many women who spent decades in chaotic relationships, peace is the greatest gift. Questions to ask yourself. Do I have meaningful connections outside of romantic relationships? Can I manage loneliness in healthy ways? What does love look like when it's not conditional? Living alone teaches you that love isn't about living with someone. It's about living authentically and connecting deeply with people who truly see you. Bonus. What about the judgment? 5 minutes. Before we wrap up, I need to address something important. The judgment. Society judges older women who live alone. People whisper. People pity. People assume something must be wrong. But here's the truth. Their judgment is their problem, not yours. Eleanor, 72, said, "When I told my family I was selling the house and moving into a smaller place alone, they were horrified. 'What will people think? Don't you want to be around family? Aren't you scared?' And I said, 'I've spent 50 years worrying about what people think. I'm done.' And you know what happened? Nothing. People talked for a month. Then they moved on. And I'm living my best life." Here's what older women living alone understand. People's opinions don't pay your bills. They don't keep you company. They don't make you happy. So why give them so much power? One woman wrote, "I guess a woman living alone is seen as sad, but I think it's sad anyone needs a relationship to not feel alone." She's right. The judgment says more about them than about you. If someone can't imagine being happy alone, that's their limitation, not yours. Another truth. Society fears women who don't need them. Women who don't need a man to feel complete. Women who don't need validation to feel worthy. Women who don't need permission to be happy. That scares people, because it challenges the story they've been told about what women should want. But here's the beautiful part. You don't owe anyone an explanation. You don't have to justify your choices. You don't have to prove you're happy. You just have to be happy. And that's enough. So let's bring it all together. We've uncovered 5 truths about older women who live alone. Truth number 1, the silence isn't emptiness, it's a sanctuary. Truth number 2, she'd rather be alone than be invisible in a relationship. Truth number 3, independence isn't frailty, it's strength. Truth number 4, she built her own life, and she's thriving. Truth number 5, living alone doesn't mean living without love. Now, does this mean every woman should live alone? No. Companionship is beautiful. Partnership is valuable. But what these women have learned is this. You don't need a relationship to be whole. You are already whole. Whether you live alone or with someone, the key is learning to be at peace with yourself. Because the truth is, you can be surrounded by people and still feel empty, or you can be alone and feel deeply fulfilled. Margaret, the 71-year-old woman I mentioned at the beginning, said it best. After several disastrous relationships, I decided I'd had enough. I bought my house, rescued my dogs, and retired at 56 to live the way I want. And you know what? I've never been happier. If this resonated with you, comment below. Do you live alone? Do you live with someone? What does peace look like for you? And don't forget to subscribe, because this channel is about growing stronger, wiser, and more confident with every passing year. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.